Cannabis Common Sense, the show that tells the truth about marijuana and the politics behind its prohibition.
Hello and welcome to another exciting edition of Cannabis Common Sense. We have a great show for you tonight. Mr. Tim Pate is standing by in the wings over here, ready to play some music.
I am here, over here.
Our graphics are working. We'll show you some pretty pictures of marijuana plants. And we have an interesting hemp news segment tonight. We'll be taking your phone calls, so you can call us on our live show here at 503-288-4448. We'll be taking your calls up to the top of the hour, but we'll buy a few crucial seconds by bringing on our infamous dancing cannabis leaves.
I feel the force.
Okay, our first hemp news story tonight is from Washington, D.C. A coalition of public interest advocacy groups filed suit this week in the United States Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia to compel the Obama administration to respond to a 9-year-old petition to reclassify marijuana under federal law. The suit was filed by attorneys Joe Elford of Americans for Safe Access, or ASA, and Michael Kennedy of the Normal Legal Foundation on behalf of the Coalition for Rescheduling Cannabis, or CRC. The coalition, which includes NORML, California NORML, the Americans for Safe Access, MPP, and other organizations, Patients Out of Time, filed a comprehensive rescheduling petition with the Drug Enforcement Administration, or DEA, on October 9, 2002, challenging marijuana's Schedule I federal classification as a controlled substance with, quote, no currently accepted medical use and a high potential for abuse, end quote. The DEA formally accepted the petition for filing on April 3rd of 2003, and per the provisions of the United States Controlled Substances Act, or the CSA, they referred the petition to the United States Department of Health and Human Services, or HHS, in July 2004 for full scientific and medical evaluation. To date, the federal government has not publicly responded to this petition from 2003. This lawsuit petitions the federal court in Washington, D.C. for a writ of mandamus, quote, directing the DEA and the Attorney General to issue a full and final determination on the petitioner's petition to reschedule marijuana, or alternatively, state whether it will initiate rulemaking proceedings within 60 days, end quote. It states, quote, the DEA's delay here of more than 8 years since the rescheduling petition was filed and more than 4 years since it received HHS's binding evaluation and recommendations is inexcusable. This agency delay is acting on the rescheduling petition is unreasonable, requiring this court to intervene, end quote. Under the Controlled Substances Act, the U.S. Attorney General has the authority to reschedule a drug if he finds it does not meet the criteria for the schedule to which it's been assigned. The United States Attorney General has delegated this authority to the administrator of the Drug Enforcement Administration, presently a Bush crony, Michelle Leinhart. In 2002, the CRC petition seeks to reschedule cannabis from its Schedule I designation to a less restrictive class under the Controlled Substances Act on the grounds that marijuana does have accepted medical uses in the United States and it's safe for use under medical supervision and has an abuse potential lower than Schedule I and Schedule II drugs, and it has a dependence liability that's also lower than Schedule I and Schedule II drugs. This petition was filed in a similar rescheduling petition that the DEA was filed in 1972, but was not granted a federal hearing on the issue until 1986. And in 1988, the Drug Enforcement Administrative Law Judge Francis Young ruled that marijuana did not meet the legal criteria of a Schedule I prohibited drug way back in 1998, and that it should be reclassified. Then Drug Enforcement Administrator John Young Long rejected the petition and the determination and a decision of the D.C. Court of Appeals eventually affirmed in 1994. A subsequent petition was filed by former Normal Director John Getman in 1995, but was rejected by the DEA in 2001. So the petition continues. It's been going on since the 70s. Maybe one of these days they'll recognize science. Our next story is out of Phoenix, Arizona, written by Paul Davenport of the Associated Press. Arizona officials are taking the state's own medical marijuana law to court. Arizona's Attorney General Tom Horne this Friday, today, sued the U.S. Justice Department and other defendants on behalf of the state, and Arizona Governor Jan Brewer, a longtime opponent of medical marijuana in Arizona. The lawsuit asks a federal judge to rule on whether strict compliance with the Arizona law provides protection from federal prosecution, or whether the Arizona measure is preempted by federal law. The Arizona state law, approved by voters in November, like those in other states, decriminalized distribution, possession, and use of marijuana for medical purposes under specified circumstances. However, the United States Attorney for Arizona has reminded state officials that marijuana remains illegal under federal law. Arizona's Attorney General said the Arizona suit was intended to get a court ruling, quote, that makes it clear what direction we can safely go, either to implement the law or that we cannot, end quote. The suit also named medical marijuana supporters, a group representing would-be dispensary owners and others, as defendants in the case. Horne said they accepted invitations to be included in the case to ensure the state law gets a vigorous defense. Arizona's Governor Brewer announced the planned lawsuit on Tuesday, saying she's concerned that the state employees could face federal prosecution for regulating the state program. Arizona's governor and their attorney general, both Republicans, opposed the medical marijuana law but said they weren't trying to thwart the will of the voters. They said the lawsuit is, you have to worry when someone says this is to not do something. I think that's the case. They're saying what they're actually trying to do. They said the lawsuit specifically prompted by a May 2nd letter in which U.S. Attorney Dennis Burke, Arizona's U.S. Attorney, noted that marijuana remains illegal under federal law and that criminal prosecution of traffickers and others are possible. The U.S. Attorney's letter did not specifically mention state employees, but he said his office intends to prosecute individuals and organizations engaged in the illegal manufacturing, distribution, and marketing involving marijuana. Arizona's Attorney General did not immediately respond for a request for comment Friday, but he told the Arizona Republic there had been no policy change. He said, quote, "We have no intention of targeting or going after people who are implementing or who are in compliance with state law," end quote. But at the same time, they can't be under the impression that they have immunity, amnesty, or a safe haven, said Arizona's Attorney General Horne. Anyway, the governor said she's worried about federal prosecution of state workers. Washington's Governor Chris Gregoire vetoed key parts of the legislative measure in Washington state to clarify her state's medical marijuana under the same pretense. Elsewhere, Rhode Island's Governor Lincoln Chafee has suspended plans to license 3 medical marijuana dispensaries after a U.S. attorney warned the dispensaries could be prosecuted for violating federal law. And in Montana, 2 medical marijuana providers sued the Justice Department on May 10th to challenge March 14th raids of their businesses. The lawsuits claim the raids exceeded the federal government's authority and preempted Montana's medical marijuana law and violated the provider's civil rights. A spokesman for the national Washington, D.C. based medical marijuana advocacy group said the Arizona lawsuit won't accomplish anything because it won't change federal law or enforcement policies and because individual patients can grow their own. According to Morgan Fox of the Marijuana Policy Project, quote, "Governor Jan Brewer in Arizona is trying to hamstring this program," end quote. Between April 14th and this Tuesday, Arizona had approved 3,696 applications for patients to have and use medical marijuana, including another 2,694 for growing up to 12 plants each. An additional 69 applications have been approved for caregivers who can provide patients marijuana for up to 5 patients other than themselves. An application period in Arizona for dispensaries was supposed to begin Wednesday, but Governor Brewer is expected to direct the Department of Health Services not to proceed with that part of the program. An attorney in Scottsdale, Arizona, Ryan Hurley, who represents would-be dispensary operators, said that they're troubled because the state's not proceeding with full implementation of the law. He said, quote, "They've invested a lot of time and effort and money in this process in reliance of the law," end quote. This is a story from the Associated Press, written by Paul Davenport and published today, 27th of May. Our last story tonight is from Alternate, written by Philip Smith, out of Washington, D.C. again. A bipartisan group of United States representatives filed 3 medical marijuana bills in the United States Congress this week on May 25th. The 3 bills aim at protecting medical marijuana patients, caregivers, and providers from ongoing federal arrests, prosecution, and harassment. The trio of bills is a clear signal to the Obama administration that disenchantment with its approach to medical marijuana is growing in the federal Congress. While the Obama Justice Department declared in its famous 2009 memo that it would not go after medical marijuana operations in compliance with state law in states where it's legal, federal prosecutors and the DEA have continued to arrest and prosecute medical marijuana providers. In the past few months, United States attorneys in states implementing or contemplating regulated and licensed medical marijuana dispensaries have sent letters threatening state officials, warning that marijuana is still illegal under federal law and that even state employees could be at risk of arrest. Meanwhile, the Drug Enforcement Administration has been sitting on a 9-year-old petition to reschedule marijuana under the Controlled Substances Act, after they ignored a previous one that had been filed in '72 and that they'd been ordered to reschedule marijuana in 1988. House Resolution 1983, the state's Medical Marijuana Protection Act of 2011, was introduced by Representative Barney Frank, a Democrat from Massachusetts, and it would exempt explicitly people complying with state medical marijuana laws from federal arrest and prosecution. It also directs the federal government to reschedule marijuana under the Controlled Substances Act. It's co-sponsored by Representative Jared Polis, a Democrat from Colorado, and Dana Rohrabacher, a Republican from California. According to Representative Barney Frank from Massachusetts, he says, quote, "The time's come for the federal government to stop preempting states' medical marijuana laws. For the federal government to come in and supersede state laws is a real mistake for those in pain for whom nothing else seems to work. This bill would block the federal prosecution of those patients who reside in those states that allow medical marijuana," end quote. Another bill, H.R. 1984, the Small Business Banking Improvement Act of 2011, was introduced by Colorado's Representative Polis, Jared Polis, and would protect banks that accept deposits from medical marijuana companies and dispensaries from federal fines and seizures and allow them to avoid the onerous suspicious activity reports they now have to file when accepting deposits from medical marijuana businesses. That's led financial institutions, including Wells Fargo, Citicorp, and Bank of America, to refuse to do business with medical marijuana businesses. The bill is co-sponsored by Representative Frank and Pete Stark of California, as well as Ron Paul, a Republican from Texas. According to Jared Polis of Colorado, quote, "When a small business, such as a medical marijuana dispensary, can't access basic banking services, they either have to become cash only and become targets of crime, or they'll end up out of business. In states that have legalized medical marijuana and for businesses that have been state approved, it's simply wrong for the federal government to intrude and threaten banks that are involved in legal transactions," end quote. A third bill, House Resolution 1985, the Small Business Tax Equity Act of 2011, was introduced by Representative Pete Stark of California and would allow medical marijuana dispensaries to deduct business expenses from their federal taxes like any other business. It's designed to prevent unnecessary audits of medical marijuana businesses by the IRS and put an end to the dozens of industry audits already underway. The bill is co-sponsored by Representatives Rohrabacher and Paul, as well as Frank and Polis. According to Representative Stark, quote, "Our tax code undercuts legal medical marijuana dispensaries by preventing them from taking all the deductions allowed for other small businesses. While unfair to these small business owners, the tax code also punishes the patients who rely on them for a safe and reliable access to medical marijuana prescribed by a doctor. The Small Business Tax Equity Act would correct these shortcomings. It's time to get the federal government out of state criminal matters so states can determine sensible drug policies for themselves, said Representative Ron Paul. He said, quote, "It's quite obvious the federal war on drugs is a disaster. Respect for state rights means that different policies can be tried in different states, and we can see which are most successful. This legislation is a step in the right direction as it removes a major federal roadblock impeding businesses that states have determined should be allowed within their borders," end quote. The congressional action was welcomed by drug reformers and medical marijuana advocates. According to Steph Scherer, the executive director of Americans for Safe Access, she said, quote, "All of these bills will have a positive effect on hundreds of thousands of Americans and only a negligible impact on the rest of the country. This kind of policy shift is a no-brainer and should garner bipartisan support in Congress. The Justice Department thinks it can bully not just state elected officials, but also patients and those who provide for them. Members of Congress need to stand up for patients and the will of the American people and push back against this federal overreach. The Department of Justice new policy is forcing the public and patients to deal with the chaotic, unregulated medical marijuana market, and it's beyond the question that states want to and have the right to legalize medical marijuana under state law. The question now is whether states should be able to implement medical marijuana programs consistent with the needs of patients and public safety and health. The legislation introduced today would allow states to implement reasonable, responsible regulations," end quote. The Obama administration, with its ambivalent approach to medical marijuana, has left a political opening, and Representatives Frank, Paulus, Stark, and Paul and their congressional allies are now rushing to fill that in. This was a news story from Alternet, written by Philip Smith. That's the end of our hemp news segment for tonight. I'm going to jump over to Tim Pate. Hey, Tim.
Hey, I have to salute Barney Frank and his co-patriots there in Congress because those sound like three very sensible bills.
Well, this is the fourth year in a row that he's introduced bills in favor of medical marijuana. You know, Representative Frank has also introduced a bill to completely legalize marijuana in the past three Congresses, so we look forward to him introducing something like that again. Of course, it's probably not going to get a lot of traction and support given the nature of the drug war at this time, but it's a bold move in the right direction.
I think so too. I think it's really smart. And I hope it has some legs, and I hope they are successful. I mean, things like that matter in the long term. If you put something intelligent before everybody, and eventually everybody's going to see why it's intelligent and vote for it.
All right.
Thank you.
That's Mr. Tim Pate, and he'll be joining me here in just a moment. If you have a question or a phone call for us tonight, give us a call at 503-288-4448. That's 503-288-4448. I guess we have a caller who's standing by. And Tim, you made it up here. Howdy, Tim.
Howdy.
And we'll take a phone call. Welcome to the show, caller. Hello, caller. Are you there?
You're here?
Maybe not. Maybe not. Well, if you're out there and you have a question for us tonight, call us at 503-288-4448. It's 503-288-4448. Maybe our caller's still there.
Are you there?
Hello, caller. You need to turn down your television and listen through the telephone. And then you won't get that 6-second delay. That's okay. Welcome to the show.
I don't think it's going to work this time.
No.
Paul?
He keeps trying. I hear him talking.
I do too. I do.
You know, we have these long gaps of silence, and then he says, "Hey, Paul." Okay, we'll try this again.
I guess
Hello?
I lost them.
4, 3, 2, 1.
Paul?
Hello.
Sorry. I can't hear you at all. I'm going to try and call you back, okay?
You bet.
All right.
My name's Steve.
Good luck.
Thanks.
You bet, Steve.
Hey, if you're out there and you want to try to call us at 503-288-4448. That's 503-288-4448. We'll get that sound worked out.
Yeah, we
I'm
will.
Sure.
It happens occasionally. Actually, very rarely. We usually get it worked out pretty quick.
He's pretty good at that. You never know, though. Sometimes they rearrange the wiring in there on us, and we get in here and don't know about that.
Well, that can mess things up pretty quick, I would think.
Certainly can. Certainly can.
Yeah, I think so.
So we had a lot of news this week. The lawsuit in Arizona being the biggest one. I know a lot of people are worried about that. It looks like they're going to continue to accept applications for patients, but try to stop the dispensaries from moving forward.
Right. And so that's, that changes what the intent of the state law was there quickly. And, so obviously, now what approach can the voters take with that if the state actually decides not to implement the law that the voters put in? I mean, that sounds kind of weird.
There are organizations that can do that, but the voters themselves don't have much recourse unless they're represented by someone.
Yeah.
Hopefully, the governor and the attorney general are supposed to represent the will of the voters.
That's right.
But in this case, they're going against. Of course, they opposed the medical marijuana law, and they were unhappy to see it pass. But a medical marijuana law passed in Arizona back in 1998, and the legislature overturned it. And another one, it passed by a 2-to-1 margin. And then in 2002, another medical marijuana law passed in Arizona. It was again overturned by the legislature. Then in 2004, a law passed in Arizona says the legislature cannot overturn a law unless they have 3/4 supermajority.
Wow.
So now they can't overturn this law because they don't have that 3/4 supermajority.
So they just decide not to implement it instead.
Well, they've actually been moving to implement it, but now the governor and the attorney general have come in and filed a federal lawsuit saying they want to stop it. So we'll see how that goes. We'll try this phone call business again.
Oh, cool.
Welcome to the show, caller. Hello.
Are you there? Maybe not tonight.
I don't.
Hello?
There you are.
Hello.
Hello.
Hey.
Perfect. Very good.
Go right
This
ahead.
is Joel. I got a question about your hemp stock
Sure. Go ahead.
contest off of Facebook.
Oh, yeah. Bring it on. What's your question?
No, there's nothing. They aren't talking to me, dude.
Maybe there's a problem with the sound.
They're
coming
talking to
through
me.
the-
Sound's coming up and down. We can't hear it really well here in the studio.
Oh,
so-
yeah, they are.
There you go.
Oh, okay.
Ask
they
again.
They are. Okay. I can hear. I can barely. Okay. Yeah. So my question about the contest is, how many of the contestants are going to be like on the final round? Is it just the top one guy that's going to be able to play at Hempstock this summer, or is it like the top 3 guys, or is it like the top 5? I'm a contestant, and I was just wondering how many guys were going to make it.
That's a good question. I'm glad you asked because, as you know, being in the contest, We have a Facebook contest just to fill everybody else in on this a little bit, give them some background, and I'll answer your question. We have an opportunity for the bands who are, in our contest to have a chance to play on Hempstock's stage here in September on the 10th and 11th, and we also offer a $1,000 prize to the winner. As you know, the contest ends on the last day of May, which is May 31st, next Tuesday night at midnight, and we'll be monitoring it at midnight to make certain that of all the votes, everybody's got a chance.
It ends May 31st?
At midnight this next week.
Why so early?
Well, because we have to make some choices and start signing up the bands and the winners and all that. So what we've decided as a committee, now it's a committee decision, but we have decided that we are going to, obviously bring the winner or offer the winner a chance to come. And then we're going to take a hard look at some of the other bands in there because we have some slots that we'd like to fill at our event. So we're not certain how many we're going to be, but we know we're going to bring some of those bands, and especially the ones that
I think we only have $1,000 prize winner.
There's only one prize, first prize, that's it. But we do have some openings on stage, and we're very interested in bringing some of the other bands. So
okay.
You could be one of them. You don't mind telling us which band you represent, would you?
Okay, yeah, that sounds pretty promising.
All right.
Well, I'm contestant number 39.
There you go.
Okay.
How many votes you got right now? Do you know?
And I've got a song called Drinking of the Past on there, if you guys want to check it out.
There you go.
Just a folk roots artist here in Portland.
An opportunity to vote for somebody. Thanks for calling,
Thanks for entering. Have a good evening. Good night. So if you're out there and you have a question for us tonight, hopefully we'll get the sound thing worked out there. You can call us at 503-288-4448. It's 503-288-4448.
Yeah, I think he was listening on his television like you were saying.
I could hear him.
I know, I
could hear
too.
the 6-second feedback, feeding it
there's
back.
a loop.
But if you're calling in, try to listen through your telephone.
It's
Turn
easier.
your television down, and maybe we'll turn the sound in the control room up. We'll keep trying that. Anyway.
No, we don't have a show next week?
Well, we'll have a show next week, but it won't be a live show.
There you go.
We're going to have a tape show next week as our soundboard engineer and our director and I are all three deciding to travel around.
Yes, you are.
We're going to disparate locations.
Well, the following week we plan on having Rhythm Culture, one of the bands that's coming up to play with Toots and the Maytals, and during that concert tour, they're going to be coming into studio here in 2 weeks. And,
we should have some film clips with the interview I do next weekend with Toots as well.
That's right.
We'll have
very good.
Some film clips with Toots Hibbert, who invented the word reggae way back in the 60s. It was eventually used for the whole genre of music. We have another caller standing by. Welcome to the show, caller. Hello, caller. I think we've got a problem with the soundboard. Maybe we shouldn't even take calls right now if we don't get that kind of worked out.
Oh, there you are.
Hello.
Hello?
Can you hear us?
Well,
no, he can't.
Paul, again, I can't hear you.
Go ahead with your question.
Steve.
Just go ahead. What's your question? And then listen. Now we got to wait for 6 seconds for that to get through.
Well, I really didn't have a question, Steve. I mean, Paul, I was wanting to talk to you about, what is going on with all these DEA police raids? Helena, Washington, Spokane. What's going on with the feds? Where's it going from here? California, all in the last few days, the last week or so. Where are we going from here there, Paul?
Well, the federal government is, and I think the Drug Enforcement Administration, there's a Bush holdover, Michelle Linehart, who had been deputy director of the DEA under Bush. And usually, when a new administration of a different party comes in, they clean house and put their own people in there. But President Obama didn't do that for some reason. President Obama took a lot of the people from the Bush administration and left them in place. In this case, the the assistant administrator of the Drug Enforcement Administration, a die-hard anti-marijuana liar, Michelle Linehart. She was just recently approved as the head of the DEA. And I think that she has directed the Justice Department to crack down, or at least the local U.S. attorneys. I don't know if she's gone directly to the head of the Justice Department holder, though she well could have. But I think we're seeing, these federal law enforcement officers depend on marijuana prohibition to pay their paycheck, and increase their power and make them feel good and get their bonus checks and go on conventions out in exotic places. And so they are pushing the federal government to crack down on marijuana. And even though it's all based on lies, the federal government has been moved to do that, apparently, because the U.S. attorneys all across the country, from Maine and Rhode Island to California and Washington and Hawaii, have all come out over the past 2 months against medical marijuana. And so our job now is to just fight back with the truth.
How do we write Obama and say, what's going on here?
You write a letter and you send it to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue in Washington, D.C. Handwritten letters carry a little bit more weight. You can put it in email if you want. I just today started promoting a petition from an international organization called AVAZ. That's A-V-A-A-Z. It's French for voice. And it's a petition to the United Nations telling them to end the war on drugs. And so that's just another example of a way to keep pushing at every level, whether it's your local municipal government, the state legislature, the federal government, or international bodies. We need to establish global cannabis freedom for social and economic justice for our people and for the environmental protection of our Mother Earth. So
we have got to get out there more. It's time for me to come out of the closet. That's why this is the first time I've ever given you my name. What's happening here with Chief Anna Kirkpatrick in Spokane?
They're they're cracking down on the dispensaries there. They don't like it. They wanted a chance to do it, and now the federal government's moving forward to do that. And so the best thing we can do is circulate petitions.
But
that's what we're trying to do.
Don't.
Huh?
Say that again.
She's kind of saying, watch out, they're coming. Yeah. Is that what I'm reading?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very frightening. Up in Washington State, I recommend you work on the Sensible Washington petition. Here in Oregon, we have our Oregon Cannabis Tax Act petition that would completely legalize it. The Sensible Washington petition would remove all penalties, leave the legislature to sort that out. There's a new bill down in California, the Regulate Marijuana Like Wine bill. So these are state initiative petitions. We need to get lots of signatures and put them on the ballot and redouble our efforts to have the people resolve this and end marijuana prohibition and restore hemp.
This is a democracy, if I'm not mistaken.
And Paul, one thing a little closer to home, as far as being outside. Is a 10-foot translucent plastic just going to be fine that nobody can see through?
It's difficult. I can't make that determination without actually inspecting. I recommend you keep it out of public view as well as possible. And so
10 foot is not enough if you go 12-foot plants.
Or 15-foot one. It can be tough. But, I can't say exactly without inspecting, but I hope it's enough. What can I say? Hey, listen, thanks for your call.
Yeah.
If you've got another call out there for us, call us at...
Thanks. I don't social network, but we need to do something. Thanks,
All right. Thank you. Well, you can go to the website right there, cannabistaxact.org, and we have our petition. You can print those out and sign the one signature sheet and mail it back in to us, or fill out the volunteer form, and... we'll mail you a petition so you can get your friends and family to sign as well. So we need your support. What our petition will do is it will end adult marijuana prohibition. It will allow adults to grow their own. It will regulate the sale of marijuana to adults, and it will restore industrial hemp for fuel, fiber, protein, and medicine. So we can use your help on that. Go there to look at it. I know we have a film clip that we're going to run here in just a second. Our Oregon legislature came up with a new bill. They were trying to restrict the medical marijuana law, and a bunch of us went down there to protest against that, including this clip from a local attorney. Do we have that clip ready? Let's go ahead and roll that video, and we'll be back in just a moment.
And that's just a fact. But the problem isn't that there's a lot of marijuana. The problem is that there isn't a regulated supply system. And we, as a community, tried to resolve that in the polls last fall by putting forward a really well-drafted regulated supply system, which unfortunately only gathered 43% of the votes. I don't think it's that the people don't want there to be a regulated supply system. I think that, frankly, I think it's not possible to pass that by an initiative. I think that that's what the legislature needs to work on. But if the legislature is really going to work on that, then the problem that Mr. Wolf identified exists. You can't have a meeting and not invite us to talk about how to resolve these problems, because we've been working on them for a long time. You can't also, I think, decide because some cops are unhappy with how many patients there are that we got to make it impossible for anybody to get a card. And really, functionally, when you change it to might mitigate to will mitigate, that's what you're doing. No physician says, well, you know, because I'll give you an example. I take every morning. I take a thyroid pill. It's a hormone replacement thing. That's what I take. My physician didn't say, here, Lee, you know, we checked your blood test. You need this thyroid replacement pill because it will mitigate this problem. He said, well, we'll see what happens. You know, maybe it'll work, maybe it won't work. If it's not working, maybe we'll increase the dose. Maybe we'll try something else. Functionally, Co-Chair Olson and Co-Chair Hun and members of the committee, if you change it from might mitigate to will mitigate, no one will be able to get a card in Oregon. And that's just wrong. I won a case today in the Oregon Supreme Court involving concealed handgun licenses. One of the abuses of the law is that sheriffs have been denying concealed handgun licenses to patients because they were patients, notwithstanding the fact that the law required them to do that. Judge Shively in Medford, Judge Price in Hillsborough, the Oregon Court of Appeals, and today the Oregon Supreme Court each said that the law requires sheriffs to issue concealed handgun licenses and to stop doing that. And then in the same way there's already been the abuses that Mr. Wolf described. You know, that's really the problem. I didn't see in the bill where it limits the number of persons a person can be a caregiver for. And I think the problem with the notion about just ascribing prior convictions as an exclusion is that there are lots of reasons people could get prior convictions. I mean, you've heard about these cases in Josephine County. I've had two with Mr. Casso. One involved a guy who had the legal number of plants, but some of the immature plants got too tall. And the other involved some people who were visiting who the police said told them that they were helping to trim, and they said they were just in the wrong place at the wrong time, and that's not a good case to take to trial. So, I'm certain that there are these kinds of abuses, but, you know, I think what we need to do is look at it in the broader perspective, again, that Mr. Wolf describes. Nobody ever talks about how big a bite the Oregon Medical Marijuana Act takes out of the underground market. If there wasn't an Oregon Medical Marijuana Act, all of the medicine, all the medicinal cannabis that patients had and used would come from the underground market. Because we've legalized that for medical purposes, that's no longer a part of the underground market. If we want to end the excess medical marijuana that's produced from winding up in the underground market, then we need to create a licensed and regulated supply system. And I encourage you to do that instead. I had one last thing, if I could, really briefly. One case I lost had to do with out-of-state patients being able to register in the state. And as a consequence of losing that case, oddly enough, the law changed and we are able to. And the reason is that the Court of Appeals was concerned about whether the requirements for being able to apply for a card interfered with the constitutional right to travel. Kind of like the way the Heart of Atlanta Motel didn't used to let African Americans stay there until the United States Supreme Court said they had to. It's unconscionable to deny out-of-state patients the right to travel in Oregon with their medicine, so long as they're within the limits of the Oregon Medical Marijuana Act. It's just wrong to allow the privilege to Oregonians and deny it to out-of-state patients. Currently, of the 16, actually this week now 17 states and the District of Columbia, this week Delaware allowed it, and Delaware statute includes post-traumatic stress syndrome. Montana and Rhode Island have reciprocity provisions. If you want to work on a reciprocity provision, I'm certainly willing to help with that. But please, just kill this bill. This is a bill that really shouldn't go anywhere, and that's the reason the other 20 haven't either. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, there it is.
All right.
And there we are.
There you have it. That was Mr. Lee Berger,
Yes, it
Portland
is.
attorney, talking to a legislative panel here in Oregon just about 9 days ago. I believe that was the 19th. Yeah,
I'd like to add that he was one of many who were there that day. That room was full, another room was full, and there were people standing
They
around.
didn't allow many people to testify, so he was fortunate to get on that panel.
Good.
We have a caller who's standing by. Welcome to the show, caller. Hello, caller.
There you
Hey,
are.
I think
Hello.
we got our sound problem fixed. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Very
That's
good.
great. Welcome to the show.
So, I want to know what your opinion is on giving medical marijuana to animals when they're in pain.
It works very well. I have a collection of medical marijuana containers and books, and about 25 of the collection pieces, these antique medical marijuana containers, are for veterinary medicines. So it was used for colic and bloating with horses and cattle. It was used for chronic pain and other conditions in various animal veterinary species, and it works well. If you can afford to give it to them, then it might help.
Worked in a lot of compresses too.
On the YouTubes, and there was this dog, and it like ate a bunch of pot that it found in the forest, and it was totally stoned, and it was hilarious.
You know, cannabis and canines, there's a similarity in there. The canna part from Latin indicates you know, that they were tied together etymologically, or in the history of those words. So it was used by, some people called it dogweed for a while in the Roman Empire, I believe.
If the owner of that marijuana paid California prices, he probably didn't find it very funny, though, I have to say.
Yeah. Well, if you're growing your own or using leaf, it can be a lot cheaper.
Yes, it's true.
Dogs there to get marijuana too, because marijuana's fun. Oh yeah, baby.
All right. Well, thank you for your phone call, your question tonight. Have a good night. We have a little interesting item. I don't have medical containers tonight, but I have volume 3 of a 3-volume set of American medicinal plants put together by William Millpaw. This is a book from 1887, and it has 5 plants for which it has a fold-out hand-colored drawing. And of course, one of the 5 plants among the American medicinal plants in here is Cannabis sativa. And so you see the male flowers on what would be your left, and the female flowers on what would be your right. And you can see little images of the seed calyxes and pods down there. And it's hand colored as well.
It's beautiful.
It's very rare to actually find one of these books that still has this in it, and no less one that's in as good condition as this one. So this is part of our Cannabis Museum collection. It's coming soon to a new museum near you. That's interesting.
That is beautiful.
So again, it's Millpaw's American Medicinal Plants.
Good job.
If you have a question for us tonight, give us a call at 503-288-4448. And we do have a caller standing by. Welcome to the show, caller.
Hi, my name is Mike, and I'm a veteran struggling with PTSD and trying to get a medical marijuana card, but it's not a symptom.
Yeah?
Yeah, it isn't in the state of Oregon. There are a few states, including California, where PTSD is included in the list of conditions for which you can get a medical marijuana card, but we haven't been able to get it added to the list here in Oregon or Washington, though there have been efforts to do so. In Israel, the Israeli Army, or Israeli Defense Force, IDF, they give their soldiers medical marijuana for PTSD, or post-traumatic stress disorder. And so it works very well, stops you from having dreams. If you're a marijuana user and you use cannabis, you don't remember your dreams. And so that's a good thing for people with post-traumatic stress.
What about traumatic brain injuries?
That definitely qualifies. If there's some sort of spasms or seizures, what's known as dystonic movement involved with a traumatic brain injury, then those qualify for medical marijuana. Any kind of chronic pain issue also qualifies. If you're an American veteran who's injured in defense of our country, we definitely want to help support you in that regard.
Severe migraines count?
Yes, migraines absolutely. Do count. Yeah. In fact, I'll go back to my collection of medical marijuana containers, and several of them specifically say migraine medicines. And so it's historically been used for migraines for hundreds of years.
Even longer.
And you can get a medical marijuana permit under the designation of chronic and severe pain for migraines.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for your service.
Yeah, thank you. And if you're out there and you have one of these conditions, you think you might qualify for medical marijuana, we have doctors all across the country who can help you, and we'll be happy to provide a referral service to help you find them. Just give us a call. If you're outside of Oregon, outside of the Portland area, you can call us at 1-800-723-0188. That's 1-800-723-0188. If you are here in the Portland area, you can call us on our local number at 503-235-4606. We have doctors who specialize in helping patients obtain their state permits for medical marijuana, and we'd be happy to help you. So just give us a call. Again, here in Portland, that's 503-235-4606. Or outside of the Portland area, you can call us toll-free at 1-800-723-0188. Or you can go to our website at hemp.org. That's HEMP.org. We'll be happy to help. I'm a disabled vet myself.
That's true, you are.
Yeah.
So,
I'm
we have
always
a
happy to
lot
help
of
veterans. And recently, the Veterans Administration has come out and said that patients who are receiving medical care at Veterans Administration hospitals can test positive for medical marijuana if they have a medical marijuana permit from their state.
There you go.
So that won't negatively impact their pain contracts or any of their other medical care through the federal system. Until that ruling came out from the VA, which was about a year ago, it had a negative impact to thousands of patients.
Exactly, and now it doesn't.
Now it doesn't.
And that's
Thank goodness they've made that change.
I think so. I mean, the more and more people we have, we've been actively at war for a very long time now.
It's true.
And there's
Since
a lot
2001.
a lot of soldiers coming home who have that.
We're going on 10 years
a lot
of this
soldiers
war on terror, they call it.
Prior to that, there were a lot of soldiers from Vietnam who came back with it. The early years of my crisis center work were did specifically with Vietnam veterans, and then it just seemed to expand from that, and now it's just growing, and it's not going to stop.
Yeah, there was the first
something
Gulf
that doesn't
War,
go away.
Now the Iraqi War and the Afghanistan War, and
we've been at war
Somalia,
a long time,
and all sorts of locations. If you're out there and you have a question for us tonight, we have about 9 or 10 minutes left. You can call us at 503-288-4448. That's 503-288-4448.
You know, a couple of weeks ago, I was reading the state medical examiner's report, the annual report on the deaths by drugs in the state of Oregon. And again, I was not surprised at all to find the results. You know, and I'm sure you could tell me without even reading the report.
No deaths attributable to marijuana.
Not again. Again, not a single one. You know, they had a
Recorded
whole bunch.
history.
They had a whole bunch with
Yeah.
methamphetamine. Had a whole bunch with methadone. They had some with heroin. You know, a high amount. A lesser with cocaine. A lot with prescription drugs. You know, what they didn't report and what I didn't see in that report was any relation to alcohol or drug or related deaths with alcohol. There was nothing in there either. So, you know,
there were a lot of them caused by alcohol, whether it's from cirrhosis of the liver,
exactly.
the accidents associated, whether it be traffic accidents or other forms. Alcohol, I think they say, causes over 100,000 deaths a year here in the United States alone, where tobacco, they say, 450,000 deaths here in the United States alone. We just had several of our friends we lost this past year from complications from tobacco.
That's correct. We did. So. You know, I was listening the other day to the radio, OPB here in the state. Anthony Johnson was debating the Clatsop County Sheriff.
Sure.
And the Clatsop County Sheriff pulled out the gateway drug arguments, And
I hope Johnson demolished him on that.
Unfortunately, it was at the last of the debate, and so he really didn't get a chance to to counter. And I know he would have, if he'd had the chance. But it's just odd when I see
our campaign manager. I didn't mean to interrupt you there.
No, it just seems to me it's ironic that here we have this fight. We've got evidence that proves that this is not what they claim it is, and yet our public officials still say that it is the evil, that it is
They
not.
use lies, and the whole thing about
Exactly.
marijuana prohibition
it's so disappointing when
all
I hear that.
implemented on lies. I mean, just the name marijuana, they used racism to use a Hispanic term to prohibit it, and the race. I won't repeat the offensive racist lies they used to criminalize marijuana. But you know what? We have another caller. Welcome to our show, caller.
Hi there. Is it me?
Yeah, hello.
Yes, welcome.
It is.
Hi,
Is it you?
Thank you. It is me.
Oh, cool.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your program, and I tell people about you all the time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And by the way, you both look fabulous tonight.
Well, thanks. We keep
I
trying.
wanted to comment on the reason that is it Leonhardt, that woman that
Michelle Leonhardt of the administrator, the head of the Drug Enforcement Administration, the evil empire.
Indeed. I believe that the reason that she's still in that position or has been put into it again is because the Republican senators have threatened to fight or filibuster the appointment that Mr. Obama actually wants to put in that position, not to mention others.
Not surprising. It seems the way that they handle it right now. Yeah. There's a tit for tat. There is no there's no compromise. It's you do that, we'll do this. It's a very, very mean spirit right now, and it's very difficult to run the country
in the
under those conditions.
Since the Civil War. Things are worse in terms of the dialogue between the various parties. It hasn't been this bad in over 150 years, I think.
I absolutely agree with you, and I also want to suggest that two of the big demons in this fight are Big Pharma
Yes.
and Big Oil.
Yes.
Yeah,
we
Big
agree.
Oil, the petrochemical industry, what I like to call the prison industrial complex, all the people who depend on money from enforcing marijuana prohibition. They're all kind of the evil conspiracy.
They are, and it's an incredible shame, but I appreciate that you're keeping up the good fight, and please continue, and it's really fun to watch your program. I look forward to September.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Kind words.
Take care. Good night.
Thanks. September, it's the 10th and the 11th this year.
It is.
Is our Portland Hemp Stock Festival. We're going to have John Trudell there.
Yes.
I know Folk Youth.
Yes, they are. Amy Nelson, Kathy Guthrie coming back again. I'm
glad.
They're
coming back, and we have some new surprises coming your way. So go to hempstock.org for more information on that. Just put in a final plug for our Oregon Cannabis Tax Act petition. I started this show about 14 and a half years ago, over 14 and a half years ago, specifically to help with the movement to end adult marijuana prohibition. And we now have a petition drive to do that, and we need your help to put it on the ballot. We've got our first 7,000 signatures in hand. We need to turn in about 130,000 signatures no later than July of 2012 to qualify for a vote in November 2012. However, we want to do it a lot earlier than that. So if you want, you can go to our website there and print out a single sheet to sign the petition yourself. We have a single-sided 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, and then you'll mail that or take it into our office, or you can fill out the volunteer form and get our petition package. We've mailed out over 700 of those over the past 2 months, and some of them are starting to turn back in. But we urge you, if you've received one of those volunteer packages, go ahead and sign it, get some signature sheets back into us. You can make copies and get involved in our movement to end adult marijuana prohibition. And so, again, that's at cannabistaxact.org. Last but not least, I'll put in one more plug. If you or a loved one suffer from chronic pain, nausea, seizures, spasms, all of that list of conditions there and more, and you think medical marijuana might help, then we have doctors who can help. So give us a call at 503-235-4606. That's 503-235-4606. 4606. Or if you're outside the Portland area, you can call us at 1-800-723-0188. You know, we've got about 2.5 minutes left and a caller trying to come through. I'll see how quickly I can take that call. Hello, caller.
Hey, how's it going?
Very well. Hey, I can take one short question.
Yeah, well, I pretty much just wanted to call and say thank you for all the information tonight. It's been really helpful.
Hey, we're glad to do it. Thanks for watching.
Oh, yeah. I got my friends all here, and we all like the information you're giving us.
I love you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay, man. Yeah, you have a good night.
Thanks for your call.
Okay, 420 every day. Good night.
We love you too.
A few times. So I want to thank all you for watching. You know, we're trying to end adult marijuana prohibition. Get involved. Educate your family and friends. Write your politicians. Pick up our petitions. Get involved, because that's the way we're going to end prohibition and restore hemp.
There you
Good
go.
night.